Hey there, listen, I just left an interview with a TV producer. We were talking about death investigators, big city investigators, detectives versus rural and small town areas. And it was interesting, the conversation we had about which was better, the ones with the multi-units and big cities, or the rurals, and why rurals maybe in some ways are better. Let's get in and out of the rain and I'll explain to you what I meant. 501. So it was interesting talking to this television producer. He's trying to get a show together to pitch to Discovery ID, and he wanted to talk to me about possibly being on the show, but myself and gobs of other people are being talked to and interviewed about it. But one thing he mentioned to me was the fact that I'm from a semi-rural area, meaning I'm not from Baltimore, I'm not from Philadelphia, Los Angeles, New York, things like that. And how can an investigator in an area that has maybe only 4 or 5 investigators or a coroner system, how can they have that many cases or shows, and how can they be as good as some of these big city investigators? And so I wasn't offended by the question because I understand the question. But here's what I explained to him. And this is a point that I think everybody needs to know. In a city like, let's just say, Los Angeles, and I'm only using that as an example because it's a big city. San Diego, Denver, it doesn't matter. So you have these police departments and sheriff's departments that have multiple divisions within them, right? So you may have homicide division, and of course within homicide division, then you have multiple investigators. You have robbery, property, all of that. So in the homicide division, you have detectives that work homicides, obviously, but then you have a CSU unit who comes out, CSI, CSU, they come out, they process the crime scenes. Then you have a medical examiner investigator that comes out, processes the body, arranges for the body to be taken back to the morgue. And then you have lab techs who process things when they get back and situations such as that. So you all understand that. In a rural area, and sometimes in a semi-rural or rural, you may only have 4 people. What that means is the detective might also be a coroner investigator, or the detective might also be a crime scene investigator. So imagine this. Imagine the detective going to the scene, looking at the crime scene, processing it as far as gritting it off and doing his searches, and then also getting out his fingerprint powder and dusting for prints and collecting blood and DNA and fiber and photographs and sketching and doing all of that. And at the same time then talking to witnesses and talking to family and tracking down a suspect. And then, of course, they package that evidence off. They send it off to the lab who does their work. They contact the coroner who arrives. He processes the body. He processes that part of it. And then at some point, they get a suspect. And then the same detective that was putting fingerprint powder around and helping the coroner with the body is now in an interview room with the suspect. A large number of homicides get solved in rural areas because, number one, obviously, they don't have as many homicides as, let's say, Chicago, LA, Denver, New York, things like that. But the investigators work it all. And so they solve these cases because they're working it from the very beginning in every aspect. They don't have somebody dusting for fingerprints and somebody else trying to interview witnesses. So being in a rural or semi-rural area is not a problem. It's really not a bad thing. And in fact, I told him that I think it would make for great television because investigators in rural areas in a lot of ways are better than the system in big cities because they have to be more generalized. Now, I'm not taking away from big cities and I'm not taking away from great detectives. But what I am saying is don't take away from the rural. Don't take away from the semi-rural areas that only have 4 investigators and they all work together. Because a lot of times they're going to solve crimes as often or more so even than the big cities. But anyway, that is my take on rural versus the big city. Never discount the rules. Till next time, everybody. See you. Have a great rest of your day.